You know, that feeling when you're lying next to someone, yet your heart feels 1,000 miles away. When the silence between you speaks louder than words ever could. I've been there. We've all been there in that space where love once burned bright, but now flickers like a dying flame. Tonight, we're going to talk about something that touches the very core of our existence, that profound loneliness that creeps into our hearts even when we're in a relationship. It's that gut-wrenching paradox of feeling utterly alone while sharing your life with someone else. Let me tell you something that might surprise you feeling. It's not a sign of failure. It's not even a sign that love has abandoned you. It's a wake-up call from your soul, asking you to pay attention to what's really happening. You see, we've been taught all our lives that relationships should complete us, that finding the one would somehow fill all the empty spaces in our hearts. But here's the truth that nobody tells you. The most profound relationship you'll ever have is not with another person, it's with yourself. When was the last time you really looked at yourself in the mirror? Not just at your reflection, but deep into your own eyes, seeking the truth that lies within. When did you last ask yourself what you truly need? What makes your soul come alive? The loneliness you're feeling in your relationship isn't just about the distance between you and your partner. It's about the distance between who you've become and who you really are. It's about the gap between the life you're living and the life your soul knows you're capable of living. Think back to when you first fell in love. Remember how alive you felt? How every moment seemed charged with possibility. That magic didn't come from your partner, it came from you. It came from your ability to be fully present, fully alive, fully open to life's possibilities. Somewhere along the way, we start believing that it's our partner's job to make us feel that way again. When love seems to leave your heart feeling lonely, it's often because you've left yourself. You've forgotten how to dance with your own soul. You've forgotten how to light up your own world. You might be sitting there thinking, but I've tried everything. I've given everything. Have you really? Or have you given everything to the relationship while forgetting to give anything to yourself? Have you been so busy trying to fix what's broken between you that you've forgotten to heal what's broken within you? Let me share something powerful with you. The quality of your relationship with others is a direct reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. When you feel lonely in love, it's often because you've stopped loving yourself first. Think about it. How many times have you compromised your truth to keep the peace? How often have you silenced your own voice to avoid rocking the boat? Each time you do this, a little piece of your soul pulls away, creating that emptiness with compromises that slowly erode their spirit. But what if, instead of running from it, you turn to face it? What if you allowed yourself to sit with this loneliness and really listen to what it's trying to tell you? The truth is, feeling lonely in a relationship often has very little to do with how much your partner loves you and everything to do with how disconnected you've become from your own source of love. It's about how far you've wandered from your own truth, your own joy, your own sense of purpose. When was the last time you pursued something simply because it lit you up inside? When did you last do something that made you feel truly alive? Not because it would please someone else, but because it resonated with your soul's deepest. You see, we enter relationships carrying buckets full of expectations, thinking our partner will fill them. We expect them to make us happy, to give our lives meaning, to heal our wounds, to make us feel complete. But no one person can carry that burden. No one person should have to. The real transformation begins when you realize that the loneliness you feel isn't a sign that love has left you. It's a sign that it's time to return to yourself. It's time to remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. It's time to reclaim the parts of yourself you've given away in the name of love. Think about the ocean for a moment. Even in its deepest, darkest depths, it's never truly empty. It's teeming with life, with possibility, with undiscovered wonders. Your heart is like that ocean. What feels like loneliness might actually be the stirring of something new wanting to be born within you. You know what's fascinating about human beings? Our incredible capacity to love. But even more fascinating is our tendency to forget that this capacity exists within us, not outside of us. We're like mighty lighthouses searching the horizon for light, forgetting that we are the source of that very light we seek. Let's talk about something that might feel uncomfortable at first. Let's talk about the stories we tell ourselves when loneliness creeps into our relationships. These stories usually start with, if only they would listen more, if only they would understand, if only they would change. But here's the revolutionary truth. The story that's really begging to be told starts with what if. What if this loneliness isn't a punishment, but a pathway? What if it's not about what's missing in your relationship, but what's waiting to be discovered within you? What if every moment of feeling disconnected from your partner is actually an invitation to reconnect? I want you to consider something profound. Every relationship in your life is teaching you something about yourself. The loneliness you feel. It's not just an empty space. It's a classroom. And right now it's teaching you the most important lesson of all. Look at your hands for a moment. These hands that have held others, that have reached out for connection, that have maybe even pushed love away out of fear. These same hands can build a bridge back to your own heart. But first, you need to understand what you've been building all this time. Many of us have built walls instead of bridges. We've constructed elaborate fortresses of like a fever that tells you something in your body needs attention. Relationship loneliness is telling you something in your soul needs attention. Instead of trying to make it go away, what if you asked it what it's trying to tell you? Every time you feel that ache in your heart, that emptiness that no amount of external validation seems to fill, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to turn inward and ask yourself, what am I really hungry for? What part of myself am I hoping someone else will complete? You see, we've been conditioned to believe that relationships should fill our empty spaces. But what if those empty spaces are sacred? What if they're not meant to be filled by someone else, but are instead waiting for you to fill them with your own light, your own truth, your own self-love? Think about the last time you felt truly alive. Chances are it wasn't when someone else was making you happy. It was when you were fully present in your own experience, fully connected to your own essence, fully expressing your own truth. The greatest illusion in relationships is that someone else holds the key to our happiness. We give away our power, waiting for another person to make us feel complete, to make us feel worthy, to make us feel alive. But the key to your happiness has always been in your own pocket. The moment you stop trying to fix the loneliness in your relationship is often the moment real connection becomes possible. Because when you stop trying to make someone else responsible for your wholeness, you create space for authentic connection to emerge. What would happen if you started treating your loneliness not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a friend bringing you an important message? What if instead of trying to escape it, you sat with it, listened to it, learned from it? Your relationship struggles aren't happening to you. They're happening for you. Every moment of disconnection is an opportunity for deeper self-connection. Every experience of loneliness is an invitation to discover the companionship of your own soul. Think about a garden for a moment. When a plant isn't thriving, wise gardeners don't just look at the leaves. They examine the roots. Your relationship loneliness is like those leaves, showing you that something needs attention at the roots of your being. The healing begins when you start tending to those roots. When you start nourishing yourself with the same care and attention you've been desperately seeking from others. When you start speaking to yourself with the same kindness you wish others would show you. If you treated yourself the way you want your partner to treat you, how would your life be different? If you gave yourself the understanding, the patience, the acceptance you're craving from someone else, what might change? You see, the greatest love story you'll ever live isn't about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person for yourself. It's about learning to be your own best friend, your own source of comfort, your own source of joy. This doesn't mean you don't need relationships. Of course you do. We all do. But it means that when you do connect with others, you're connecting from a place of wholeness rather than need, from a place of love rather than lack. Right now, someone in this room is holding back tears, recognizing their own story in these words. Someone is finally understanding why their heart feels so heavy, even though on paper everything looks perfect. This moment, this recognition, this is where healing begins. The most challenging truth about relationship loneliness is that it often has nothing to do with how much time you spend together. You can share every meal, sleep in the same bed, plan your future together, and still feel like you're drowning in solitude. Why? Because true connection isn't measured in minutes or moments. It's measured in authenticity. They'll only tell you something that might change everything. The loneliness you feel in your relationship isn't a sign that you're with the wrong person. It's a sign that you've lost connection with the right person. Think about how often you've changed yourself to fit someone else's idea of love. How many times have you dimmed your light because it made others uncomfortable? How often have you swallowed your truth because speaking it felt too risky? Each time you do this, you're not just disconnecting from your partner. You're disconnecting from yourself. Your soul speaks to you in whispers, and loneliness is one of its loudest whispers. It's saying, come back home. Come back to yourself. Come back to your truth. But we're so busy trying to fix our relationships that we miss this vital message. When was the last time you felt completely, unabashedly yourself? Not someone's partner, not someone's ideal, not someone's expectation, just purely, authentically you. That feeling of being truly yourself. That's what your heart is crying out for. You know, it's ironic. We often feel most lonely in relationships when we're trying hardest to make them work. We bend ourselves into shapes that don't fit, speak words that aren't ours, live lives that don't align with our soul to live your truth. The very loneliness you're feeling might be your soul's way of saying it's time to reclaim your power. Think about water for a moment. When it's flowing freely, it's clear, vibrant, full of life. But when it's stagnant, it becomes murky, lifeless. Your emotional energy works the same way. When you stop the natural flow of your authentic self-expression, your emotional life becomes stagnant, and loneliness is often the result. But here's the beautiful thing about stagnant water. It just takes a little movement to start the flow again. One small decision to honor your truth, one tiny step toward your dreams. One moment of choosing yourself, that's all it takes to start the flow again. You might be wondering, but what about my relationship? Won't choosing myself mean losing them? This is where most people get stuck. They believe it's an either choice, either I honor myself or I maintain my relationship. But what if it's not about choosing between yourself and your relationship? What if choosing yourself is the only way to create the possibility of true connection? Because here's what happens when you start choosing yourself. You become magnetic. Not in that superficial self-help way, but in a deep soul-level way. When you're aligned with your truth, when you're living from your center, when you're honoring your own heart, you naturally attract authentic connections. The relationships that are meant for you will be drawn to your authenticity. The love that's meant for you will celebrate your wholeness. The connections that are meant for you will thrive on your truth. But first, you have to be brave enough to find out who you really are, without all the roles you play, without all the masks you wear, without all the compromises you've made. You have to be willing to meet yourself again, maybe for the first time in years. Start asking yourself the questions you've been afraid to ask. What do I really want? What makes my heart sing? What dreams have I abandoned? What parts of myself have I silenced? These questions might feel uncomfortable at first, but they're the keys to unlocking your authentic self. The opposite of loneliness isn't companionship. It's wholeness. You could be surrounded by people and still feel lonely if you're disconnected from yourself. But when you're connected to your own heart, even moments of solitude feel rich with presence. Your task isn't to find ways to be less lonely in your relationship. Your task is to find your way back to yourself, to recover the parts of you that got lost in the pursuit of love, to remember that you are not just enough, you are everything you've been looking for. This journey back to yourself isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's not about abandoning your relationship. It's about creating the foundation for real intimacy. Because true intimacy can only exist between two people who are intimate with themselves first. Look at the relationship loneliness you're experiencing now as a spiritual alarm clock. It's waking you up to the truth of who you are and what you need. It's calling you back to yourself. Every moment of disconnection is actually an invitation to reconnect with your own heart. What if you started treating yourself like someone you love? What if you spoke to yourself in your relationship? Notice how in those moments you weren't just disconnected from your partner. You were disconnected from your own power to love. You were waiting for love to come to you instead of allowing it to. Here's a truth that might revolutionize Your understanding of relationship lonely lies. The love you're seeking isn't in another person's hands. It's in your own heart, waiting to be unleashed. But we can't access this love when we're clutching tightly to our wounds, our fears, our past disappointments. Let me share something profound with you. Every moment of loneliness in your relationship is actually a doorway. Behind that door isn't just the pain you're feeling. It's also the power you've forgotten you have. The power to love without conditions. The power to be whole without validation. You know what's fascinating? We often create the very situations we're most afraid of. We're so afraid of being lonely that we hold back parts of ourselves, thinking this will keep love close. But in doing so, we create a barrier between ourselves and genuine connection. Think about a time when you were completely yourself with someone. Remember how free that felt? How real, how alive? That feeling wasn't coming from them. It was coming from your willingness to be authentic. Your willingness to stand in your truth, whatever that truth might be. The greatest prison in relationships isn't the other person's inability to understand you. It's your own reluctance to be understood. We build walls of protection that become our isolation. We create masks of perfection that become our... We construct facades of strength that become our weakness. The moment you decide to break free from these self-imposed prisons, the moment you choose truth over harmony, authenticity over approval, growth over comfort. This isn't about ending relationships. It's about ending the patterns that keep you lonely within them. Your relationship loneliness is actually trying to tell you something extraordinary. It's trying to tell you that you're ready. Ready to shed the layers that aren't really you. Ready to step into your full power. Ready to become the love you've been seeking. Think about trees for a moment. They don't wait for perfect conditions to grow. They grow through whatever conditions they find themselves in. Your heart is like that tree. It doesn't need perfect conditions to love. It just needs your permission to grow, to expand, to reach for the light. What would happen if you stopped waiting for someone else to fill your empty spaces? What if instead you started filling them with your own dreams, your own passion, your own zest for life? What if you became so full of your own light that loneliness had no room to exist? The cure for relationship loneliness isn't more connection with others. It's deeper connection with yourself. It's about becoming so aligned with your own truth that you no longer need others to validate your worth. When you start living from this place of self-connection, something magical happens. The very relationships that once left you feeling lonely begin to transform. Not because the other person has changed, but because you're no longer approaching relationships. You begin to love not because you need love, but because you are love. You begin to share not because you need validation, but because you're overflowing with your own light. You begin to connect not because you're afraid of being alone, but because you're excited to share your whole... This is what authentic relationships look like. They're not about filling each other's emptiness. They're about celebrating each other's fullness. They're not about completing each other. They're about complementing each other. They're not about needing. They're about sharing. Your task now is to become the source of the love you're seeking, to become so full of your own light that loneliness becomes impossible, to become so true to yourself that every relationship in your life has no choice but to either rise to meet your authenticity or fall away to make room for what's meant for you. Start asking yourself different questions. Instead of why am I so lonely? Ask what parts of myself am I ready to reclaim? Instead of why don't they understand me? Ask how can I understand myself better? Instead of why isn't this relationship fulfilling me? Ask how can I become more fulfilled within myself? The answers to these questions won't always be comfortable. Growth rarely is, but they will be true. And in that truth lies your freedom from relationship loneliness. Every moment of loneliness is actually a call to come home to yourself. Every feeling of disconnection is an invitation to connect more deeply with your own heart. Every experience of emptiness is a reminder of your own power to become. Your heart isn't lonely because love is left. It's lonely because you left yourself. The journey back to connection isn't about finding the right person or fixing your relationship. It's about returning to yourself again and again until you become the love you've been seeking. This is your moment of power. This is your invitation to rise. This is your chance to transform relationship loneliness into the greatest love story of all, the story of coming home to yourself. Let me share something powerful with you. The moment you're in right now, this very moment of recognition and understanding, this isn't the end of your story. This is the beginning of your revolution. You see, we've been walking through the landscape of relationship loneliness together, uncovering its hidden messages, understanding its deeper purpose. But now it's time to talk about transformation. Real, lasting, soul-level transformation. The kind of transformation that happens when you finally understand that relationship loneliness isn't your enemy. It's your awakening. It's not your burden. It's your breakthrough. It's not your weakness. It's your wings. Think about how long you've been carrying this weight. How long you've been trying to fill that empty space with someone else's presence. How long you've been looking outside yourself for what can only be found within. Today, right now, that changes. Your relationship loneliness has been the doorway. Walking through it isn't about finding better ways to connect with others. It's about discovering the untapped power within you. The power to be whole. The power to be free. The power to be love itself. What if I told you that this loneliness you've been feeling isn't a sign that love has abandoned you? What if it's actually a sign that a greater love is trying to emerge through you? A love that doesn't depend on anyone else's presence or approval. A love that flows from you rather than to you. This is where real healing begins. Not in trying to fix what's broken between you and someone else, but in mending the broken connection between you and your own heart. In reclaiming the parts of yourself you've given away. In remembering the truth of who you are. Your heart isn't meant to be a waiting room where you sit hoping someone else will come and make you feel complete. Your heart is meant to be a garden where you grow your own joy, cultivate your own peace, nurture your own dreams. Every time you felt that ache, that authentic, powerful, radiant, being who knows how to love without losing yourself. From this moment forward, let every experience of loneliness be your reminder to come back to yourself. Let it be the bell that calls you back to your own heart. Let it be the light that guides you home to your own truth. When you feel that familiar ache in your heart, instead of reaching out to fill it, reach in to understand it. Instead of trying to escape it, allow it to teach you. Instead of seeing it as your weakness, recognize it as your awakening. Your task isn't to never feel lonely again. It's to become so aligned with your own truth that loneliness transforms into solitude, emptiness transforms into possibility, and need transforms into abundance. Start treating your relationship with yourself as the most important relationship in your life, because it is. It's the foundation upon which all other relationships are built. It's the template for how others will treat you. It's the source from which all your love flows. When you commit to this journey of self-love, something miraculous happens. The very relationships that once left you feeling lonely begin to transform. Not because others have changed, but because you're no longer approaching relationships from a place of love. You begin to attract people who celebrate your wholeness rather than try to fill your emptiness. You begin to create connections based on sharing rather than needing. You begin to experience love as an overflow rather than a hunger. This is your moment of power. This is your time of transformation. This is your invitation to step into the fullness of who you really are. You are not here to find love. You are here to become it. You are not here to escape loneliness. You are here to transform it. You are here to complete yourself through others. You are here to remember that you were never incomplete to begin with. Let every breath be a reminder that you are worthy of your own love. Let every heartbeat be a reminder that you are the source of your own joy. Let every moment of loneliness be a reminder that you are being called back to yourself. The love you've been seeking has never been outside of you. It's been within you all along, waiting for you to remember, waiting for you to return, waiting for you to become what you've always been. Love itself. This is your truth. This is your power. This is your time. Welcome home to yourself.